For many years, Earth had lived in peace while the galaxy around it burned. Far beyond the solar system, alien empires clashed in a war so massive that entire planets were turned into lifeless rocks. Star systems vanished from trade maps, communication. Beacons went dark, and refugee ships drifted through space with no home to return to. But Earth stayed away from it all. The leaders of the United Earth Council had made it clear from the beginning the Galactic War was not humanity's problem. They had fought too many wars in their own history to jump into another one without reason. Humans had finally built a stable, united planet with food for everyone, cities filled with light, and technology that gave people long, healthy lives. Nobody wanted to risk it all for a war between alien races who had been enemies for thousands of years before humans even knew they existed. Trade ships still came and went, carrying rare alien metals, medicines, and technology in exchange for Earth's food, water, and engineering skills. The great orbital stations above Earth welcomed travelers of many species and alien visitors, often praised humans for being neutral in bars and markets. People told each other that staying out of the war was the smartest decision Earth had ever made. Even when news broadcasts showed images of destroyed planets and burning cities far away. Most people changed the channel. It was easy to believe that the danger would never come close. Children went to school, people worked in offices and factories, and spaceports stayed busy with peaceful ships instead of war fleets for the average person. The Galactic War was nothing more than something they read about in the headlines. Still, not everyone was comfortable with this peace in the shadows. Earth's intelligence agencies collected reports from deep space scouts and alien contacts. Some whispered that the war was spreading slowly, pulling in new systems one after another. Others claimed that both sides were running low on resources and would soon turn their eyes toward neutral worlds like Earth. These warnings were ignored by most politicians. After all, no enemy had threatened them directly. Instead, the government poured resources into building stronger trade relations and avoiding anything that could be seen as taking sides. The military was kept ready but quiet. Hidden deep in space docks and underground bases were fleets of advanced ships that the public never saw. Training drills were carried out under the excuse of routine defense practice. But the soldiers knew the truth. They were preparing for the day peace ended, even if the rest of the planet didn't believe. That day would come. Some commanders argued that neutrality was only temporary in the galaxy. Peace without strength was an invitation to be conquered. But they kept these thoughts to themselves because speaking them too loudly could cause panic. Life on Earth felt almost too perfect. Cities glittered at night, oceans were clean, and air travel between continents was faster than ever. Families planned vacations to Mars or the orbital resorts. Alien tourists walked the streets of New York, Tokyo, and Nairobi, buying human art and tasting human food. This peaceful mixing of species made people believe that war would never touch them. Why would anyone attack a planet that had no enemies? And yet, somewhere deep in the hearts of certain people, soldiers, scientists, and those who studied history, there was a quiet unease. History had shown that no nation, no planet, number civilization could stay untouched forever when great powers fought for control. Neutrality was a fragile shield, one that could shatter with a single wrong move or a sudden change in the war's direction. But for now, Earth stood apart from the bustling streets to the quiet farms. From the great towers of glass to the far-off mining colonies, humanity lived as if the Galactic War was nothing more than a distant storm. They told themselves that the fighting was light years away. They told themselves that their leaders' decisions would keep them safe. They told themselves that as long as they stayed out of it, the war would never come to their door. What no one knew was that somewhere in the cold darkness of space, far beyond the last human outpost, something was already moving toward them. It did not care about treaties or trade agreements or peaceful promises. It did not see Earth as a neutral planet. It saw Earth as a prize, and one day soon, the people who had enjoyed the years of peace would wake to a sky filled with ships that were not their own. It started as a strange reading on a deep space scanner. It's a small blip at the edge of the solar system, moving slowly but steadily toward the outer planets at first. The technicians thought it was just another merchant ship returning from a long voyage, but when they tried to contact it, there was no answer. No identification code, no trade license signal, not even a distress beacon. Just silence. The blip kept moving, as if ignoring every attempt to reach it. 2 days later, a patrol ship was sent to investigate. When it arrived, the crew found an alien scout vessel. Drifting and powerless, its hull was covered in deep, ugly burns. Like something had tried to melt through it. Parts of its outer plating were torn away, revealing twisted metal and sparking wires. Through the cracked cockpit glass, they could see the crew motionless. Strapped into their seats, there were no signs of life. The rescue team boarded, wearing full suits, their boots clanging against the metal floor. The air inside was thin and smelled faintly of burned plastic. They searched every corner, but there were no survivors. No logs, no messages. The black box recorder, which should have told them what happened, was gone. Not destroyed, just missing. As if someone had taken it when the patrol ship returned with the wreck. Rumors spread quickly through the orbital stations. People whispered in bars and markets about the silent vessel. Some claimed it had been attacked by a faction in the war. Others said it was a warning. There were even stories that the ship had drifted for months, hunted by something unseen, but none of these tales could be proven. Official reports called it an unidentified incident, a phrase that meant nothing but kept the public calm. In military circles, the discovery was taken far more seriously. Analysts studied the damage patterns, and what they found made them uneasy. The burns were not from standard ship weapons. They were too precise, too focused. It looked as if the attackers wanted to disable the ship without completely destroying it. That suggested a purpose. Perhaps they wanted something from it. Or from its crew. The missing black box only deepened the mystery without it. They had no record of the ship's last moments, no proof of what had happened. Intelligence agents tried to trace the vessel's origin. Its design matched ships used by a small, neutral race that traded with both sides of the Galactic War. This made no sense. Why attack them? They had no armies, no resources worth stealing. The only explanation left was the one nobody wanted to say aloud. The attackers hadn't cared who they hit. They were simply moving toward new targets, and Earth might be in their path. Weeks passed, and people began to forget about the wreck. Life returned to normal, or at least it seemed to. But in certain corners of Earth's defense network, tension was growing. Sensors at the edge of the solar system began picking up more odd readings. Faint energy spikes, strange magnetic distortions. They appeared for a few hours, then vanished. It was almost as if something was testing the system, probing for weaknesses. Ships were quietly sent to investigate, but they found nothing, only empty space. The commanders grew frustrated, because they knew whoever was out there was careful. They were watching, learning, and waiting. One night, a listening station on the far side of the moon detected a brief signal. It was not human, and it was not from any known alien language. It lasted only a few seconds before cutting off. But the tone of it chilled the crew. It sounded less like communication and more like a marking, a note left in the dark. When the recording was analyzed, experts agreed it was likely a navigation ping, the kind used by fleets to track and guide ships during long voyages. But if that was true, it meant a fleet was moving somewhere near Earth's space, and that fleet was staying silent on purpose. The government decided not to make this public. They feared that if people knew, panic would spread across the planet, still and quiet. Closed-door meetings, the leaders began to discuss emergency plans. If this mysterious presence did belong to one side of the Galactic War, then neutrality might no longer matter. Earth could be seen as a valuable target, rich in resources, with no war-hardened defenses in orbit. The very things that had made Earth a peaceful trade hub could now make it vulnerable. But for most people, life went on without knowing how close danger might be. Families still booked vacations. Spaceports still bustled with ships. News channels talked about politics, sports, and the economy, never mentioning the quiet fear building in the Defense Council. Even some military officers refused to believe that an attack was coming. They thought the strange ship and the disappearing signals were just coincidences. They told themselves there was no reason for anyone to come to Earth. They had no idea how wrong they were. Far beyond Pluto, in the cold black where sunlight fades, something was moving. It did not rush. It did not make itself known. It drifted quietly, changing course little by little. Its path was not random. It was coming closer, soon. The people of Earth would realize that the Galactic War they had ignored for so long was not going to pass them by. It was coming to their doorstep, and when it arrived, no one would be ready. It began on a cold winter night. The sky over Earth was calm, stars shining above cities and quiet towns. Most people were asleep, unaware that far above them, in the silent darkness of space, something was coming closer. In the orbital defense headquarters, a junior technician noticed an unusual blip on the long-range scanner. At first, he thought it was another glitch. The system sometimes picked up stray asteroids or debris. But as he zoomed in, more blips appeared. Not one, not two, but dozens. All moving in perfect formation, they were coming from deep space, straight toward the inner planets. He called for his supervisor, who stared at the screen for a long, tense moment before speaking in a low voice. This isn't a drill. Emergency protocols were activated instantly. Silent alarms spread through the defense network, waking commanders in their homes and calling them to duty across the planet. Radar stations and deep space telescopes locked onto the incoming fleet. It wasn't broadcasting identification codes. It wasn't sending a greeting or a warning. It was simply moving toward Earth's territory. Fast and without hesitation, the first attempt to contact them went unanswered. The second attempt was met with the same silence by the third attempt. The commanders knew this was not a lost merchant convoy or a refugee fleet. Whoever they were, they had no interest in talking. In the war rooms, the atmosphere grew heavy. Maps of the solar system glowed on massive screens, showing the fleets approach like a shadow creeping over the light. Within hours, the news had leaked to a few key politicians. They were sworn to secrecy, but secrets never stayed buried for long. Soon, whispers began among high-ranking officers. Some believed this was one side of the Galactic War finally deciding to drag Earth into the fight. Others feared it was something worse, a third force, unknown to both sides. Theories meant nothing now, because the fleet kept coming, and no one knew what their intentions were on the second night. The fleet reached the edge of the asteroid belt. Small reconnaissance drones were sent out from Earth's defense stations to gather images, but only one drone returned. Its cameras showed blurry shapes, massive ships with jagged armor and faint red lights running along their hulls. The images were enough to confirm one thing. These were warships, not traders, not explorers. Ships designed for one purpose: to fight. The United Earth Council met in emergency session. Half the room argued for launching a defensive strike now, before the fleet got any closer. The other half wanted to wait, fearing that firing first might turn a tense situation into a war. In the end, they chose to hold position, hoping the intruders would turn away. That hope didn't last long. On the morning of the third day, the fleet broke formation and spread into smaller groups. Some moved toward the moon, others toward Earth's orbital stations. And still, They said nothing. Earth's military commanders felt the pressure building. Orders were given to put all defense forces on full alert. Fighter squadrons scrambled from their hangars. Patrol ships armed their weapons, and orbital laser batteries charged for the first time in years. The public began to notice in the big cities. People saw military transports racing through the skies. Spaceport broadcasts suddenly canceled all civilian flights. News anchors tried to calm viewers, claiming it was routine military activity, but their nervous eyes told a different story. Rumors exploded across social media. Some said the aliens were here to trade. Others claimed an invasion was hours away. No one knew the truth, except those in the defense command centers. And they were watching the screens with grim faces. That night, the first clear image of the enemy flagship was transmitted to Earth. It was enormous, a floating fortress bristling with weapon turrets. Its hull was blackened, as if it had seen countless battles. The shape of it was nothing like the ships from the two warring sides of the Galactic War. This wasn't a familiar enemy. It was something new, and that made it even more dangerous. By dawn, the world could no longer be kept in the dark. The President of the United Earth Council appeared on every channel. Her voice was steady, but there was a weight in her words. She told the people that unidentified ships had entered Earth's space, that all defense forces were on high alert, that civilians should remain calm but prepare for emergency measures. It was the first time in decades that such an announcement had been made. For many, it was the moment they realized the years of peace were over. In the hours that followed, cities grew tense, families stayed indoors. Stocking up on supplies, volunteers rushed to shelters to help repair. Some even signed up for military service, determined to defend their home. Meanwhile, in orbit, the defense fleet moved into position, forming a wall between the incoming ships and Earth. The silence from the enemy remained unbroken, and as the sun set once more, both sides floated in the cold void, watching each other, waiting for the first move to be made. Deep inside the defense headquarters, one senior commander broke the silence in the war room. "They're testing our patience," he said. "They want us to make the first mistake." But nobody could be sure. All they knew was that the knock on Earth's door had finally come, and it was louder than anyone had ever imagined. The attack came without warning. No one heard a threat, no one received a demand. One moment the enemy fleet was holding position beyond the moon. The next moment, a bright flash lit up the black sky. The first explosion tore through Earth's main moon base, a place filled with scientists, engineers, and families. It had always been considered safe, far from the war, a center for research and mining. Not combat. In less than a minute, its communications went silent. The last transmission received was a short, panicked message. "They're here," and then static. From Earth, the people could see it through telescopes and news broadcasts. A pillar of fire rose from the moon's surface, and chunks of glowing debris floated into space. Emergency beacons lit up the dark, but many were quickly silenced. The enemy wasn't just attacking, they were making sure nothing survived. In the defense headquarters, chaos erupted. Orders flew from one officer to another. Screens filled with red alerts. Fighter squadrons were launched immediately toward the moon, but they were too late. By the time they arrived, the base was gone. Nothing but a smoking crater and drifting metal. A few escape pods were spotted, but the enemy ships ignored them. It was as if they wanted survivors to return with the story of what had happened. On Earth, fear began to turn into anger. For decades, humanity had believed their neutrality would keep them safe. Now that belief had been shattered in a single strike. The streets in major cities filled with protests, demanding action. People wanted answers. Who were these attackers, and why had they come? In the war room, analysts studied the attack patterns. The enemy had not targeted Earth directly, at least not yet. Instead, they had struck at a key support point, quote, cutting off a vital base that linked Earth to deep space. It was a calculated move. Without the moon base, Earth's ability to track distant threats was weakened. Some military leaders argued this was just the first step. The enemy would disable the outer defenses before moving in for the kill. That night, as Earth's leaders debated their next move, the enemy fleet shifted position. Several ships began moving toward the orbital stations that circled Earth. These stations were not military. They were hubs for trade, transport, and tourism. Thousands of civilians lived and worked on them. If they fell, not only would Earth lose important supply lines, but countless lives would be lost. The president ordered an immediate evacuation of the stations. Shuttles and transport ships raced to dock, loading as many people as they could, but it was slow work and the enemy was closing in fast. Defense forces positioned themselves between the stations and the approaching warships. For hours, both sides moved in a tense dance, closing the distance step by step. And then it happened again, a second sudden strike, this time on Station Vega 5, the largest civilian hub in orbit. The blast ripped through its central ring, sending entire sections spinning into space. People inside screamed as the artificial gravity failed. Some were sucked into the void before emergency doors sealed the breach. Rescue ships scrambled to pull survivors from the wreckage, but the enemy kept firing, forcing them to retreat on Earth. The images hit like a punch to the chest. Families watching the news recognized loved ones in the chaos. The idea that the fight was far away had died completely. Now it was above their heads, and no one knew where the next strike would land. Inside the Defense Council, the argument that had been simmering for weeks finally exploded. Some politicians still clung to the hope that Earth could avoid full-scale war by negotiating. But the military commanders had seen enough. The enemy wasn't here to talk, they were here to destroy. Every minute spent debating was another minute the enemy could use to strike again. Late that night, a decision was made. Earth would fight back. Orders were sent to awaken hidden fleets, ships built in secret, stored in underground hangars, and distant asteroid bases. Pilots and soldiers were recalled from leave for the first time in decades. The planetary defense grid was activated to full power. Massive laser arrays hummed as they charged. Missile silos opened, and battle stations came alive with movement. But even as these preparations began, people knew it might already be too late. The enemy had drawn first blood. They had destroyed the moon base, crippled an orbital station, and proven they could strike anywhere they wanted. Earth had been caught off guard, and now they were playing catch-up against an opponent that seemed to always be one step ahead. In homes, shelters, and military bunkers, people waited. Some prayed, some cried. Some sharpened their resolve. Above them, the enemy ships drifted like shadows in the dark, watching, waiting, and ready for the next blow. The peace humanity had enjoyed for so long was gone, and the war they had tried to ignore had finally come crashing through their door. The meeting room was silent except for the low hum of the holographic display. Every leader of the United Earth Council was there, sitting around the long table, eyes fixed on the image of the enemy fleet above the moon. No one could pretend any more that this was a misunderstanding. The moon base was gone. An orbital station lay in ruins, and hundreds were dead. The first voice to speak belonged to a general, his tone sharp and heavy. "If we wait any longer, they will cut us to pieces," he said. "We have to fight now." But not everyone agreed. Some politicians still clung to the hope of avoiding war. They argued that if Earth launched the first counterattack, the enemy might respond by destroying cities. One diplomat leaned forward and said quietly, "If we open fire, there is no going back. We will become part of the Galactic War." Others snapped back angrily, "We are already part of it." They decided that for us when they attacked. The debate dragged on. each word filled with tension. Meanwhile, outside in the cold darkness of space, the enemy ships kept moving slowly, almost lazily, as if daring Earth to make a move. Every few hours, one would drift closer to a key satellite or defense station, testing reaction times. It was psychological warfare, and it was working. The longer Earth waited, the more anxious the people became in the military control centers. Commanders grew restless. They had fleets ready to launch, but no permission to use them. Pilots sat in their cockpits, waiting for orders that never came. The enemy, on the other hand, was wasting no time. Surveillance drones showed them positioning weapons platforms near the moon. It was clear they were preparing for something big. The turning point came when Earth's atmosphere defense grid, a network of satellites and laser arrays designed to stop incoming attacks, was suddenly targeted. Without warning, 3 enemy ships broke formation and fired precise shots. 2 satellites exploded instantly. The third spun out of orbit in flames on the ground. Alarms blared in cities across the world. The grid had been damaged, leaving a hole in Earth's main defense system. It was the crack in the shield the enemy had been looking for, inside the council chamber. This was the moment the last doubts fell away. The president stood, her voice firm. "They have struck us again. We cannot wait for them to choose the next target. We will fight." Around the table, heads nodded, some reluctantly, some with grim determination. Orders were given, and the room that had been filled with arguments only moments before now moved with a single purpose. Across the planet, the response was immediate. Hidden bases came alive as massive blast doors slid open, revealing sleek warships that had been kept secret for decades. Subterranean hangars filled with the roar of engines. Pilots, engineers, and soldiers moved with practiced speed, their faces a mix of fear and resolve. For years, these forces had been training for a war they hoped would never come. Now that war was here, messages went out to every colony and outpost under Earth's control. They were ordered to prepare for defense and send any available ships to join the main fleet. Civilian vessels were recalled from deep space, some to serve as supply ships, others to be converted into makeshift carriers. Factories shifted into wartime production overnight. The quiet hum of peace was replaced by the pounding rhythm of urgency. In orbit, the first wave of Earth's fleet began to form. Dozens of ships, lined up in tight formation, their hulls gleaming under the light of the sun. They were smaller than the enemy's massive warships, but faster, built for hit-and-run tactics. Alongside them, heavy cruisers and missile carriers moved into position. This was not a display anymore. This was a battle line. The people of Earth watched it all unfold on their screens. Some cheered, finally, seeing their world stand up for itself. Others prayed silently, knowing that this decision would cost lives. In homes and shelters, families clung to each other. They knew that once the first shot was fired, there would be no turning back. As the fleet prepared, a final transmission was sent to the enemy. It was short, direct, and translated into every known alien language. "You have attacked our people and destroyed our homes. Leave now, or we will respond with force." The enemy did not answer. Instead, their ships shifted into a new formation, an attack pattern that was the reply. Inside the command ship, the fleet admiral gave the order, "Prepare all weapons. We strike first." Across the fleet, missile bays opened, energy cannons charged, and targeting systems locked onto enemy signatures. The tension was so thick, it felt like the whole planet was holding its breath. And then, with a single word, fire, the silence of space was shattered. Bright streaks of light tore across the void as Earth's first counterattack in decades began. The missiles raced toward the enemy ships, explosions blooming against the black backdrop. For the first time, the enemy was forced to react. Their formation broke slightly as they returned fire. The war for Earth had truly begun. The moment had come. Earth's hidden fleet was ready to fight. Long kept secret from the public, these ships were the last hope to defend the planet. Pilots who had trained in silence for years now sat in their cockpits, helmets on, hearts pounding. They knew this mission was dangerous. Most expected they might never come home, but they also knew that without them, Earth would fall. The fleet was smaller than the enemy's, but faster and more agile. Human ships were built for speed and surprise. With weapons designed to strike hard and vanish, the enemy relied on large, heavily armored ships that moved slowly but packed powerful firepower. It was a battle of different styles. Earth's fighters had to use their skill and teamwork. To survive, the fleet launched from underground bases and hidden space docks. The roar of engines filled the hangars as ships rose into the blackness of space. Pilots checked their systems one last time and listened to calm words from their commanders. "Remember, you fight for everyone on Earth." The voice said over the comms with a deep breath. The fighters pushed forward into the unknown as they approached the enemy fleet. The tension tightened. The enemy ships loomed large on their scanners, huge shapes with bright red lights. Blinking like eyes, the humans stayed quiet, communicating only in short bursts. Sharing data on enemy positions and movements, they moved in small groups, darting around the edges of the enemy formation, looking for weak points. The first contact was sudden and violent. Enemy laser beams cut through the dark, some aimed directly at the human fighters. Explosions bloomed in space as ships were hit and sent spinning. But Earth's pilots were trained for this. They twisted and rolled, dodging fire, and firing back with rapid pulses from their energy cannons. One squadron, led by Captain Maya Chen, took the lead. Her ship was smaller than most, but fast and deadly. She directed her team through the enemy lines with calm confidence. "Focus on their missile launchers," she ordered. "We can't let them fire on Earth." Her squad weaved through enemy fire, targeting weapon systems and engines. Several enemy ships were damaged, forced to fall back. Behind the front line, heavy cruisers launched volleys of missiles. The sky filled with streaks of light, some exploding on enemy shields, others missing and drifting into space. Human engineers monitored every hit and miss, adjusting tactics on the fly. This was the first real battle for Earth's survival. And every decision mattered, but the enemy was far from defeated. Their larger ships opened wide energy beams, sweeping through the fighters' formations. Several human ships exploded in brilliant flashes, their pilots lost in the vast emptiness. The loss was felt deeply, but no one hesitated. Each fighter pushed harder, fueled by the knowledge that Earth's future depended on them. In the midst of battle, a young pilot named Alex Garcia found himself separated from his squadron. His ship was hit by a stray blast, systems flickering. For a moment, he drifted alone in space. His heart beat loud in his ears. Then he spotted an enemy ship. Turning toward him, weapons powering up, Alex knew he had only seconds. He aimed his last energy blast at the enemy's engine core. The shot hit true, causing a massive explosion. His ship shook violently, but remained intact. He sent a quick signal back to his squadron, "Target down," he said with relief. Meanwhile, back on Earth, millions watched live feeds of the battle. News anchors spoke in hushed tones, describing the bravery of the pilots and the risks being taken. Families prayed for their loved ones fighting in space. The nation felt a mix of fear and hope. This fight was dangerous, but it was their fight now. As the battle wore on, the enemy began to change tactics. They pulled some ships back, forming a defensive ring around their command vessel. It was clear they wanted to protect their leader and communication systems. Earth's commanders recognized this as a chance. They ordered a focused strike on the enemy flagship, hoping to cripple their command and control. The strike group moved forward with precision. Missiles streaked through space, guided by pilots. And targeting computers, explosions rocked the enemy flagship, shaking the entire fleet. For the first time, the enemy showed signs of panic. Smaller ships scattered, some broke formation, trying to protect themselves. Captain Maya Chen led her squadron through the chaos. Her voice was steady. "Keep pressure on them. We can win this." The fighters pushed harder, focusing fire on the damaged flagship. The battle was fierce, but Earth's pilots had something the enemy didn't: a fierce determination to protect their home. Hours passed like minutes, the fight raging without rest. Both sides took heavy losses, but Earth's fleet held strong. By the end of the day, the enemy flagship was badly damaged and forced to retreat. Remaining enemy ships withdrew, disappearing into the darkness of space. The victory was small but important. Earth had proven it could fight back, and fight hard. The cost had been high. Many brave pilots lost, but the spirit of humanity burned brighter than ever. Back on Earth, celebrations were quiet, mixed with mourning. Leaders promised to strengthen defenses and prepare for the battles ahead. The war was far from over, but now Earth had a voice that would be heard in the galaxy. The battle had changed everything. Earth's small fleet had forced the enemy flagship to retreat, but the war was far from over. Back at the Defense Command Center, analysts pored over the data captured during the fight. What they found was shocking. Hidden inside the enemy communications was a secret message. Encrypted and disguised, it revealed a terrible truth. Earth was not a random target. The attackers had marked the planet years ago as part of a larger plan. They had been watching and waiting for the right moment. This knowledge sent a wave of fear through the command staff. If the enemy had been watching for so long, it meant they knew Earth's defenses, weaknesses, and strengths better than anyone thought. It also meant that the attacks were carefully planned, designed to weaken the planet step by step. The moon base, the orbital stations, even the atmosphere grid. None of these strikes were mistakes. They were deliberate blows to prepare Earth for conquest. More disturbing was what the decrypted message showed about the enemy's goal. It was not just about conquest or resources. They wanted Earth for something unique, something no one had ever expected. The message hinted at Earth's position in the galaxy being special, a key to controlling a hidden power. Scientists and military leaders alike felt a chill. What this meant was still a mystery, but it was clear that Earth's fate was tied to something bigger than a war. With this new understanding, the United Earth Council faced a difficult choice. They could retreat and build stronger defenses, hoping to survive a long siege, or they could take the fight to the enemy, pushing into space to stop the threat before it grew stronger. Many argued for caution, fearing the cost of an offensive campaign. But others believed that only by striking first could Earth have a chance to change the future. The decision was made to expand the war beyond Earth's orbit. Plans were drawn to build more ships, to train more pilots, and to form alliances with friendly alien races. Earth was no longer just a neutral planet. It had become a player in the Galactic War. The military and scientific communities worked side by side. Sharing information and technology, human engineers began modifying ships with new weapons inspired by the data recovered from the enemy. Every day brought new discoveries, new ways to fight smarter and harder. Meanwhile, the people of Earth felt the weight of this new reality. The peaceful lives they once knew were gone, replaced by constant vigilance and preparation. Schools included lessons on space warfare. Families stocked emergency supplies, communities trained for air raids and evacuation drills. The world had united like never before. Borders faded as humanity stood together against a common threat. At the same time, spies and scouts were sent deep into enemy territory, risking their lives to gather information, to find weaknesses, and to learn the enemy's secrets. One team discovered that the enemy was building a massive weapon hidden in a distant system. It was unlike anything Earth had seen. capable of destroying entire planets with a single blast. This discovery pushed the urgency of Earth's campaign to new heights. The first offensive missions were launched carefully. Small groups of ships hit enemy supply lines and communication hubs, each. Victory was small but important. Every battle tested Earth's new strategies and technologies. Pilots gained experience. Commanders learned the enemy's tactics. The war was becoming a brutal chess game, with lives as the stakes back on Earth. Leaders communicated regularly with alien allies who had remained neutral or sided with humanity. Together, they formed councils and coalitions, sharing resources and intelligence. The galaxy was changing rapidly. What had once seemed like a distant war was now a struggle for survival and power involving many species. For the soldiers and civilians alike, hope was a fragile but vital thing. Every victory brought relief. Every loss brought sorrow, but through it all, humanity's will to survive and protect their home never faded. They knew the path ahead was long and dangerous, but they were ready to face whatever came next. The enemy's plan had been uncovered. And now Earth was fighting not just for its own survival, but for the future of the galaxy itself. The war was no longer a distant storm. It was a fire that burned bright and fierce, and humanity had stepped into the blaze, determined to fight, to endure, and to win. The war had changed Earth forever. The enemy's first attacks had brought fear and destruction, but they had also awakened something powerful in humanity. Now, for the first time in history, the entire planet was united under one purpose. Survival nations that once argued over land and politics now shared technology, resources, and soldiers. The old divisions seemed small compared to the threat from the stars. In the weeks after the last battle, Earth's skies were busy with activity. Shipyards worked day and night, building new warships faster than ever before. Orbital stations that had once been trade hubs were transformed into defense platforms, bristling with weapons. Fighter pilots, trained in zero-gravity combat, running drills that pushed them to their limits. Every able engineer, scientist, and technician played a role. Some designed advanced shielding systems, others built faster engines. Even farmers and factory workers contributed, sending food, supplies, and materials to keep the fleet strong. But the rebuilding wasn't just about ships and weapons. The people of Earth had been changed inside. No longer could they pretend the galaxy's problems were far away. Children grew up hearing stories of bravery in space. Teenagers trained in survival skills and first aid, ready to help if the war reached the ground. In every city, public screens showed updates on the fleet, keeping everyone informed and connected to the fight. Still, the scars of the enemy's first strikes remained. The moon base was a silent crater, a reminder of how quickly peace could be shattered. Families still mourned those lost in the orbital station attacks. Memorials were built, not just to honor the dead, but to remind the living why they fought. People visited these sites and left flowers, messages, and flags. Some wept quietly, others stood in silence, their faces set with determination. Meanwhile, the military prepared for the next phase. Scouts had reported that the enemy had retreated deeper into space, but no one believed they were gone. The damage to their flagship had been a blow, but they would return stronger and more dangerous. This time, Earth would not wait for them to knock on the door. This time, humanity would be ready. Allies from other worlds began to arrive. Drawn by Earth's courage, some brought advanced technology. Others offered ships and experienced soldiers for centuries. Humans had been considered a young, inexperienced race in the galaxy. Now, they were being taken seriously. Stories of Earth's defense had spread far beyond the solar system. Other species saw that humans could fight, adapt, and survive even against stronger forces. In a speech broadcast across the planet and 2 allied fleets, the president addressed everyone. "We did not choose this war," she said, her voice steady and strong. "But we will finish it. Earth will not bow, and we will not break. The galaxy will know we protect what is ours." Her words lit a fire in the hearts of billions. In the streets, people cheered. In the barracks, soldiers tightened their fists and promised themselves they would return from battle. New war plans were drawn. Earth's fleets would begin patrolling not just their own space, but also allied territories. They would seek out enemy supply lines and dismantle them piece by piece. The war was no longer about defense alone. It was about taking control of the fight. Commanders called this new strategy the push. It would be risky, but if it worked, the enemy would lose the advantage they had held for so long as the first patrol fleets prepared to leave. Families gathered at spaceports to say goodbye to their loved ones. Some hugged tightly, afraid to let go. Others smiled bravely, hiding their fear. Pilots and crew members boarded their ships with steady steps. Each one carried not just weapons, but the hopes of the entire planet. On the day the fleet launched, millions watched from Earth's surface. Bright streaks of light rose into the sky, one after another, until the heavens seemed full of fire. It was a sight no one would forget. Not a sign of fear, but of strength. Humanity was no longer waiting to be attacked. They were moving forward, into the vast unknown. For the first time since the war began, people could feel hope again. It was fragile, yes, but it was their hope that the enemy could be defeated. Hope that the galaxy would see humans not as weak or helpless, but as a force to be respected. Hope that one day, peace would return. Not the fragile peace of before, but one built on strength and unity. Far beyond Earth, the enemy was already regrouping. They had underestimated humanity once. They would not make the same mistake again. But neither would Earth. The next time they met, it would not be as an attacker and a victim. It would be as two forces clashing for the fate of the galaxy, and this time, humanity intended to win.